Secret Service agents protecting Biden's granddaughter, Naomi Biden, opened fire on 3 people as they attempted to break into an unmarked and unoccupied vehicle. This went down late last night in Georgetown. The agents assigned to protect Naomi Biden were out with her in the Georgetown neighborhood late Sunday night when they saw the 3 people breaking into the window of the parked and unoccupied SUV. One official told the AP on the condition of anonymity. One of the agents opened fire, but no one was struck by the gunfire. The Secret Service said in a statement the 3 people were seen fleeing in a red car, and the Secret Service said it put out a regional bulletin to Metropolitan Police to be on the lookout for it.
Just very disturbing. Carjackings in D.C. have been talked about a lot recently because they are up. They're up dramatically in the neighborhood that I live in. There's like twice as many this year so far as there were last year. Representative Henry Cuellar, a Democrat, was carjacked in his car very near where I live in the city. Same story there. It was 3 people with masks, with guns, came up while he was sitting in the car. So they actually had him get out of the car and stole it. He said they seemed to be young. I think it was reported that he thought they were probably around the age of 16. And they did recover the car in that case. Yeah,
65% of those arrested for carjacking are kids, are juveniles, so that wouldn't be surprising. Which I think, I know you're going to disagree with this, but I think raises some interesting questions about the wisdom of firing at them, especially since it was an unoccupied car and it didn't seem like any lives were at risk.
Well, I need to know more about the specific circumstances. Obviously, just wildly opening fire in the middle of a crowded street it would not be ideal. I mean, they didn't hit the person. I'm glad no one innocent was hit as well. I don't know that indiscriminately firing on carjackers is the solution, but there needs to something very much has to be done because we are living in this city. So in many cities, carjackings and thefts and crime increased during the pandemic. In a lot of places, in most places, it's actually receded back down to acceptable levels. That is not the case here in the nation's capital. There is a real problem. We've had dramatically more murders this year than we had last year so far. The year isn't over yet. Like I said, the carjacking, and it seems to be again mostly like gangs of teenagers. This is a very serious problem, and I'm sure the people doing it had no idea that this was Naomi Biden, just like they probably had no idea that this was the congressman. They're just targeting vehicles and making off with them. There was one last week. The carjacker stole the car and then crashed it into a gas station, which is obviously very dangerous. Muriel Bowser has been distributing. Did you hear about this? If you own a vehicle, if you live in D.C. and you own a vehicle, which I qualify, I could take advantage of this wonderful program. They're giving out free trackers. You can put a tracker in your vehicle so that when it's carjacked, you can watch it like a missing laptop or a missing AirPod. You could. Is
that not something useful that you might want to take advantage of?
Oh no, for sure. I would absolutely take advantage of that, but we need the problem actually addressed, the carjacking problem, because this is not good. I live in a nice area of the city. I certainly would not park my car on the street overnight. I see broken glass in the area like where I walk my dogs all the time. So it's really bad, and I don't know what it says about the nation's capital that we can't bring this problem under control whatsoever.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a pretty high recovery rate on jacked cars, and some of them, I think, are these joyride instances, which is probably why there's such a high recovery rate. So I do think that having a tracker in your car is a good idea, and that also is perhaps why it's a good idea not to go ahead and compound the crime with a homicide. Going back to the Biden instance, I do wonder if there's protocol about whether Secret Service agents are supposed to engage with other kinds of crimes that they see happening, if they have to see something, say something, and does that at all imperil their ability to do their primary job of protecting whoever they've been assigned to? I mean, you can imagine a world in which carjackers returned fire, for instance, and now you've escalated a situation where from I'm protecting the president's granddaughter to I am instigating fire at her as opposed to people breaking into a car. I do wonder if there's going to be any follow-up investigation into how that situation in particular was handled, because it doesn't seem like, as you pointed out, Robby, gunfire in the middle of Georgetown, which is a popular area full of nightlife and people out at all hours, is necessarily a good outcome.
Right. I mean, the vehicle was a government. It was their vehicle. They weren't in it, so I think it wasn't like they were witnessing a random mugging or something.
Yeah,
and had to intervene. They had to. It could have been someone was breaking in the car in order to put a device in it or some kind of. I mean, they wouldn't have. They weren't going to just like let them do it and not do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the view that there's a whole range of human activity between not doing anything at all and shooting someone. But I suspect that I'll leave it up to the Secret Service people with all of their training to affirm whether or not my suspicions are accurate.
Yeah. Well, but it is. I mean, it is dangerous. People have been killed while being carjacked. There was that video footage went very viral. It's horrible. Of an older man in the city who was being carjacked, actually by teen girls, and is, while fighting for control of the steering wheel, gets hit by the car or gets like thrown out of the vehicle and killed. So it's because cars themselves are dangerous things. There can be a high injury, accident, fatality rate for the victims and for the perpetrators. So it is. I mean, it's something that needs to be addressed. Whether that is the police doing something in the midst of the carjacking, I don't know. But just like you said, oh, they recover the vehicle a lot of the time. I mean, I don't think that's very comforting. It's not like, oh, your car's going to get stolen, but you might get it back. Is not like we can't have a society like that.
I don't think it's comforting. I'm not saying that to suggest people should be comforted about their car being stolen. I say that to suggest that it might be better to wait for the cops to recover it as opposed to shooting a perpetrator, especially since we talked at length earlier this year, or was it last year, Robby, about the guy who killed a child outside of his house because he thought he was jacking his car, and there was a lot of debate about whether or not that was the right course of action. I think, what was he, a 12-year-old?
I mean, I think he was. Wasn't the debate was over whether it was his car or not? But it was a stolen. No, he was carjacking. That wasn't a debate.
It wasn't his car.
We have a different view on this subject. Obviously, I don't think you're required to be the victim of a crime of that magnitude, and not to say that everyone should take every matter into their own hands, but there is going to be more of that kind of, I feel like I need a gun, I need to defend my property, if this number of carjackings continues. So probably the ideal thing would be to actually arrest and prosecute and keep behind bars the probably small number of people who are responsible for all of these incidents.
I have some interesting. I think I'm more interested to find out why there are so many kids are engaged in this behavior. What other kinds of things could they be occupied doing? Are there enough after-school activities and supports? What's happening with parents in the home? Are they absent because they're working additional jobs? Do we have adequate child care for low-income families? Are people experiencing economic precarity that is also driving into some of this behavior? I think if you've seen that kids used to not do this, and now they're doing it more, obviously something has changed, and this isn't an issue where people are inherently criminal, violent, and need to be thrown away and locked away and throw away the key, especially when you're dealing with children. That's my view of the thing.
Well, of course, and if we've lost social support systems that prevent low-income people or people with difficult family situations or people who are on that social fringe and potential to fall into criminal behavior, obviously we want to have some intervention before we get there. I suspect a lot of the pandemic mitigations efforts made that a lot more challenging, but now we should be able to bring those things back so that we can stop people from getting into the point of criminality. I think we totally agree on that, but once you're in the position where you're a repeated carjacker, there needs to be the public safety component has to enter in at some point.
I would just put out there that if you take a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old and you throw them in jail, they're not going to jail for life. because that would be overly punitive. I think everyone agrees that you shouldn't get a life sentence for stealing a car. That means at some point they're going to get out of jail, and you will have just taken those years where they might have already been finishing high school, going to college, going to trade school, having a job, starting a family, and making them hardened criminals when they're going to pop out at 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and then there's still going to be no forward movement on the underlying issue.
Yeah, I think there has to be some middle ground between turning you into a bigger criminal or locking you up forever and releasing you the next day to carjack again at will, as seems to be the case. But we will see if there are any updates on that story later. And that actually does it for today on Rising. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope it was a great show.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.